Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to this press conference. First of all, I owe you an apology. A couple of days ago, in a newspaper, parts of the report was revealed, and it's something that we don't want to see. It's very difficult for us. Members, most of us, have, we abide by the confidential agreement, and now there is a leak, and we can't find out where the leak came from. And all we can do is to stick to our personal code. And I apologize to you that a newspaper has obtained the information a couple of days ago. This is a report on Chapter 4 of report number 63. And previously there was a Chapter 3 report, and we have taken more time to finalize and report to you the Chapter 4 of the report, which is related to the air traffic control system. We have held 6 meetings, one of which is to visit the CAD, Civil Aviation Department. And we have used very strong words in our criticism. We've had a number of internal meetings in the compilation of the report. It's not just about a waste of money. Hong Kong is an international aviation hub. Hong Kong is an international financial center. If our air traffic control is not properly done, it will have far-reaching implications to Hong Kong. It will harm life and property. We've always spent a lot of time and effort on report, but this particular issue is very complicated, and that's why we have taken more time to prepare the report, and that is the reason. We have looked over a number of areas. First, procurement of the air traffic control system.
They spent $486 million for procurement of the system, and yet its delivery has been delayed for 3 years, 3.5 years. It wouldn't be a problem if they had explained to the council and also the community, because LegCo has the duty to monitor how the government spends money and to ensure that the money is spent in a cost-effective manner. However, they never reported the delay to the PWSC or Finance Committee or the relevant panel. When they came from $1.5 billion, they told us that the current system was still in use and it would have to be phased out by 2012. And even if were to continue to use, there would be problems. Now it is the 3rd of June 2015, and we're still using the old system. So we find it strange. How come the department never came back to the council to explain what had gone wrong and whether they had hidden anything from us? So we've been considering these issues. And secondly, we also look at the tendering terms. The tendering terms were drafted by the Civil Aviation Department and then passed on to the Logistics Department of the government and to the Central Tendering Board. So the whole thing has been driven by the CAD. We spent a lot of time studying the tendering terms. The difference between the last tendering exercise when the incumbent system was procured, we had to go through hundreds of pages of documents. For the last tendering document, the system had been in the market for 12 months, and for the existing system, they only required a minimum track record of not less than 6 months. We asked for the justifications. A minimum track record of 12 months was first required because we would then have a year through with different weather conditions. They explained to us, but we didn't find it acceptable. And there are other things in the tender documents, and we can address them if you ask about them later. And then for the procurement of the precision runway monitor project, they spent $101.4 million to buy it. It was enough to build a new school. When they came to LegCo for money, they claimed that the system would make it possible for independent mixed mode of operation of our airport's 2 runways, and therefore to allow more takeoffs and landings. But they didn't explain to the council that the radar wouldn't be useful unless there were technological advancements. I think so far the radar has been idle. So the objectives for asking the money were never achieved, and it is now put into standby mode. So this is not just a question of money, it is also about safety. Now I am happy to answer questions from you. Now, the lead member for this inquiry is Mr. Kenneth Leung. However, other members of the committee have devoted equally lots of time to the inquiry. We have Mr. Leung Shing, Mr. Wong Yok Man, Mr. Posey, Mr. Gary Chen, and Mr. Alan Leung. So, therefore, devoted a lot of time to the study of this chapter, and we're most grateful to the Secretariat. They even spent more time than we did on this chapter. Many friends from outside the government also gave us a lot of feedback, assisting us to understand such a complicated system, and everything was considered in a fair, open, and just manner. Yes. One by one, please, and please identify yourself and also the organization you represent. Apple Daily, Chairman. Would you think that this is one of the most serious incidents in recent years? Because apart from money, life and property is also at risk. And will you require the relevant department to give a fuller account of the things that had happened? Mr. Kenneth Leung. First, we spent a lot of time in drafting the report, and secondly, you can see that there's been serious dereliction of duty involved. Now, this is not just about the air traffic management system. Now, it is about life and property, human lives. And secondly, it's also about Hong Kong's status as an aviation hub. We are the Asian aviation hub and also a financial center. Should anything happen, can we maintain a position as an aviation hub in Asia? This is questionable. And secondly, the tendering procedures. The CAD is not the only department that have to go through tendering departments. Other government departments are doing the same. And how come the terms were drafted and implemented in such a manner? After 6 meetings in a row, in the main, we were of the view that we're not happy and not satisfied with the answers. As regards follow-up actions, we proposed to the Transport and Housing Bureau to monitor in a more proactive manner. the implementation of the ATMS, whether it can really be commissioned in the first half of 2016. According to the director of CA, it should be commissioned in the early part of 2016. It's just about 12 months away from now. And we also recommended to the THB that when it deems necessary, it can employ independent outside experts from the government to see whether the system we have procured is safe, efficient, and reliable. I think I will leave time for other colleagues to supplement. And you asked whether this is one of the most serious or the most serious case we have seen in recent years. Mr. Pawsey, I am not really a very experienced member of the PAC, but this case indeed we feel that it is most serious negligence. And therefore you can see that our conclusion is rather strongly worded. Last time, it was about the construction of a shower room and also a dancing room. Yes, it was an irregularity, but this time it is about safety, which we cannot compromise. Can we go on to the next question? Oriental Daily. Good afternoon. I'm from Oriental Daily. Can you speak up, please? Regarding the new ATMS, it is said that it hopefully could be commissioned in early 2016. Now, if in the first half of 2016 it cannot be commissioned, what concrete follow-up action will you take? And Mr. Norman Lowe, the Director General, will retire in September next year. What action would you recommend to the government to follow up? Because they said that there might be some disciplinary action against Mr. Norman Lowe, Director General of CA, to the extent that perhaps some pensions would be deducted. Now, we are not the government. We are just the Public Accounts Committee of the Council. We are exercising Article 73(2) of the Basic Law. Article 73(2) of the Basic Law, that is to monitor government expenses. It is not within our portfolio to advise the government how to act. It is something entirely for the government alone.
Perhaps I would defer to Alan Leung to answer the rest of your question. Thank you. In this case, it involves the CAD's handling of the new ATMS. We think that the mistakes were quite serious because at the stage of tendering, how the tender document was drafted, whether there was any due diligence exercised. From the evidence we saw, we found that before the tender was awarded, there was information that can easily be found on the internet. David Cameron visited India, and when he was there, he found that he visited the airport, and for a few minutes, information from 83, that is the air traffic problem, the air traffic management system, disappeared for a few minutes. We asked further questions because we wanted more information to be found before the tender was awarded. And of course, there are other significant issues, say, for example, as stated in the report, the proposed system. What is the definition of system? Is it tailor-made to the contractor who was later awarded the tender? That was our doubt. So it was the tender was awarded. When it comes to implementation, there was a delay of 3 years. The latest estimate was the middle of 2016, that is end of June, when it can be commissioned. But from the information, the papers we have received, it said that if the new system cannot take the place of the old system simply cannot sustain because parts cannot be replaced, and there will be a lot of problems. So it's practically falling apart. So there are lots of irregularities identified. And we don't have the system as promised in the Finance Committee. And now we see that it can only be commissioned in June next year. So all the way from drafting the tender documents, the processing of the tender exercise, whether due diligence was done, and the monitoring of the implementation of the contract have displayed serious negligence. And we are concerned that if the incumbent Director General of the CAD is allowed to continue to monitor the implementation of the contract, we are very concerned whether the system will actually be commissioned in June next year. That's why we make a suggestion to consider to engage an external and independent expert to assess the safety and performance of the new ATMS. When it comes to the Precision Runway Monitor project, what we criticized them for mainly was the concealment of the fact that the Precision Runway Monitor radar can only be used when there is independent mixed mode of operation for the two runways. But since the Hong Kong International Airport was commissioned, there has never been an occasion when the two runways are allowed to function separately and simultaneously. This information was missing from the information supplied to the Finance Committee, and we think that this is a very serious omission, and that's why we have used very strong words to criticize them. I would like to supplement one point. Apart from the serious delay and other problems, in the delay we find something quite important. The supplier charges about $5.9 million for the upgrading and maintenance work of the existing system. But if they delay in delivering the new system, they only face a penalty of a maximum of $5 million. So for the contractor, there is sufficient incentive for them to drag their feet because they continue to charge us every year. So we cannot allow and tolerate the CAD and the supplier to continue to drag their feet. That's why we would like to have someone who is impartial, who has authority, someone who is external to give us an assessment and to tell us, if necessary, when we should just leave the whole thing and start afresh. Raymond Wong. Well, actually, you have covered everything, and there is a question asked by the journalist, and it's not answered. What recommendations we could make in relation to the Director General? The chairman said that there is nothing we can do, and I'd like to add to that. After the CSB has read the report, if they do, then if they think that there is any need to take disciplinary action, then they have to do something. And if law enforcement agencies think that there is corruption involved, then they can start investigation. And if the public think, after they have read the report, that that the DG actually there is something dodgy about him, then the members of the public can take the report to the ICAC and make a report. Well, these are the possibilities. Well, the secretary himself is an accountable official, and we can hold him accountable. That is Anthony Cheung, the secretary for Transport and Housing. Yes, the CAD may come to us for funding, but they still have to go via the THB. So the secretary for the TH has the biggest liability. Now we have a report. We have clearly stated that we strongly condemn and deplore that the Director General, as head of the CAD, had blatantly failed to perform his responsibility and duties in ensuring that due diligence relating to the ATMS contract was conducted adequately and thoroughly, the conditions of the contract set out clearly and appropriately, and it was implemented effectively on schedule and in a cost-effective manner. As we said, you all have the right to follow it up. I would like to talk about the contract variation. Mr. Kenneth Leung. Well, there is a serious problem. When you are looking at the tender, you will look at two major areas, technicality and price. According to the Central Tender Board, we know about the criteria. There will be scores given to the price and also other technical areas, and there is a weighting. And in 2011, February, the CAD awarded the contract to this contractor. We wonder in our 6 meetings, and we have spent a lot of time to ask questions in this area. After the contract was awarded to this contractor, it only took 11 months. That is, in January 2012, there was the first contract variation request. And it's made by the contractor, that is the one awarded the tender. And as a result, $42 million extra has to be paid, that is in Hong Kong dollars. And then another 9 months later, October 2013, there was the second contract variation request, and this time it requires an addition of 46 million Hong Kong dollars. So the contract was awarded based on this price and this level of technicality, and then later more were asked for. We were not happy with the answers given by the CAD in relation to the contract variations.
Allow me to follow up on this point. Regarding the contract terms, when we invited tenderers to come, we told that that such variations could have been included in the original tender document. Either the tender document was not properly prepared, or it was just an opportunity given for them to vary the contract at $90 million. And the difference between the first and the second tender price was just $90 million. So we spent a lot of time on this point. Contract variations is not a simple thing. It should be dealt with in a fair manner. Another question, please. Cable TV. Can you speak up, please? Yes, I'm from Cable TV. You use the term strongly condemn. I'd like to know whether this is the strongest wording and the most serious of the kind. And you talked about inadequacies. What is the role of the assistant DG, Mr. Wong Yok Man? Well, we had 6 meetings and to take evidence, and then we had internal meetings to form a judgment on the evidence taken, and our conclusions could be found in the report. I just read out a paragraph to you. There's been negligence, and the Director General has not exercised his responsibility properly, because the 2 variations cost the government $90 million. slippage. At most, liquidated damages would only be $50 million. So I think with reasons to query what has happened in the interim. However, we do not have any conspiracy theory. We are being pragmatic. The DG has an inshakable responsibility. We use words such as strongly condemn and deplore, as said by the chairman. We have not used such wording recently. Yes, strongly condemn or deplore. We have deplore Mr. Timothy Tong. But for Mr. Norman No, we strongly condemn him. Mr. Mnang Shing, would you like to comment, please? As members of the PAC, the focus of our discussion is how do we form our conclusion. So through discussions, we came to a unanimous view. We strongly condemn and deplore the DG because this system is of critical significance to safety. For any delay in the commissioning of the system, there should be a report to us and how to ensure safety, and there should be a proper use of public finances. After 6 meetings, and 5 of which are open meetings to take evidence, we've come to this conclusion. For the sake of the community, our public finances, and all stakeholders, we think that the whole case deserves our strong condemnation. I think it's quite rare for PAC to pass such a comment on a department, not really a department, on an individual, or both. Any supplement from Ms. Allen Leung? All right, we'll allow you to ask as many questions as possible. Our replies may be a bit lengthy because we want to give you more information. RTHK?
The incident concerns passenger safety and could endanger lives. Do you think that the Transport Bureau has really failed miserably in monitoring the CAD? And is there any other follow-up action that you can take? And the second question is the Director General of Civil Aviation, of course, he's still leading the department. How confident are you that the new system will be put in place by June next year? Thank you.
Okay, I ask Kenneth to answer part of the question and Paul to answer the other part of the question. And if other members like to chip in, I'll be very happy for them to do it. Okay.
Of course, I think the Transport and Housing Bureau, as the supervisory bureau of the CID, has a duty and responsibility to supervise the operation of the department. And that's why we have spent quite a number of paragraphs setting out our recommendations, how the Bureau should follow up this matter, including, of course, Allen Leung mentioned that we recommend them to engage an external consultant.
Team.
Expertise.
A team, yeah.
A team
of experts.
Well, I mean consultants, okay? To ascertain whether the air traffic control system, which has been procured, is reliable, safe, and effective. It's very important, reliability and safety. And I'll defer the second part of your question to Paul Tse.
Paul.
Well, during the course of the proceedings, we were repeatedly given to understand that the latest, when the whole system will be in place, will be sometime in June next year. But that is the assurance that we're given. But at the same time, bearing in mind that the sort of 3.5 years delay that we've been experiencing, and bearing in mind that in matters such as the air control system, safety is paramount. So obviously we'll make sure that the safety concern has all been addressed before we'll allow or we'll accept any sort of commencement of the new system. So at the moment, of course, we cannot tell for sure whether they will deliver as promised, but we'll make sure that safety will not be compromised in the process.
Comes to responsibility. be they secretary, being responsible officers, or any directorate, then they head a department. They have a duty, a fiduciary duty, to do their utmost to deliver any system that they have put forward to LegCo for funding and for implementation, as Gaki explained earlier, that responsibility not only falls on to the junior officers, but they have a responsibility to deliver, and also a responsibility to ensure that information is not only flowing downward, information must flow upward, sideward, and to have a sunshine policy. The whole concept is, if they do not come back to LegCo and explain why such a delay, although they are within budget or whatever it is, that's not the reason. It is a situation that they have not done their duty. And secondly, as I said earlier in the beginning of the speech, that there's property and safety of individuals flying in the air and people working in the airplane. We have a duty of care to everyone who actually use our system. And this responsibility, the CAD Director General has to take, and similarly, the Secretary for Housing and Transport needs to also be responsible. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm from Commercial Radio. I've got 2 questions. Can you please speak up? I have 2 questions. Chairman, can you confirm that the wording, the pace used against Mr. Norman Lo, like strongly condemn and deplore the DG, is it really the strongest wording of its kind in this term? And is it true that Mr. Norman Lo has the biggest role to play in this matter, far above that of the whole department of CAD, so much so that you've decided to use such strong wording against him?
Mr. Jie just now said that there is a need to reassess safety and reliability of the entire system. You also mentioned whether it has to be revisited. Did the PAC actually discuss whether the new system can be commissioned? And if the end it cannot be commissioned, what loss will we face? As I said, that this system affects lives and property. It leaves us no room but to use the strongest word, because there is a duty to be taken upon. And we want all departments, not just the CAD. If a department deals with matters related to property and life, then they have the duty to do their job properly. And in this regard, the CAD did not properly perform its duty. And on the contrary, there were significant problems surfaced. And there was a delay of 3.5 years, and there was a lot of public money used. $100 million was put into it, and it could have built a hospital, a school, facilities for children. So resources are not to be wasted in this way, and they have the duty to make sure it's properly spent. And the design of the system, the tender document was drafted by the department. The department has the duty, and the DG, being the head, has the duty to ensure everything is done properly. Although there is a delay of 3.5 years, and time and again there has been further delays, and the system could not be delivered. And compared to other airports in the world, they try to distance themselves from this contractor, or they change their mind soon after they've decided to use this contractor, or there has been delays in the delivery of the system. And in the end, as the chairman said, we have to think about safety. So there may be a point in time when we have to decide that we would not tolerate any more delay, and we have to just cut our loss and leave. And Mr. Leung talked about the delay and whether it will have an impact on safety, and whether we have to decide enough is enough. So that's why we have to consider a point in time when we have to cut our losses. Then that's why we need an external consultant to give us an impartial view. Mr. Raymond Wong, you may all be very concerned about the unresolved issues of the new ATMS. Members are all concerned. That's why we urge the THB to consider engaging an external and independent expert to assess the safety and performance of the new ATMS. And they have not answered us yet, so we have to keep dunning them. The THB will have to be held responsible for the negligence of the DG, who has been strongly condemned and deplored. And the THB will have to shoulder the responsibility for not properly monitoring the department under it. Still, we don't rest assured. We ask the THB to consider engaging an external and independent expert to assess the safety and performance of the new ATMS, and to find out whether the contractor can indeed have the new ATMS commissioned in the first half of next year. We have had a site visit. We only possess limited knowledge. We visited the new CAD headquarters, and we were told that it would be commissioned in the first half of next year. We can't tell. That's why we asked the THB to engage an expert so as to give us a clear answer. All government contracts will have to be open, fair and impartial. We have doubts because we see problems in the contract. Well, perhaps I'll defer to an expert in our panel. Mr. Alan Leung. We see that the CAD is controller, the DG. And the serious irregularity of the new ATMS, you can look at it in three ways. First, before the contracts were signed, the signing and drafting of the contract and implementation of the contracts. After we have had the public hearing and our discussions, we note and we have noticed certain issues, and we have drawn conclusions. We have identified irregularities in each aspect of the three. Say, for example, the drafting of the contract. There is one thing we find problematic. The tender document only requires the tenderer to provide a system with a minimum track record of not less than 6 months. We find it strange, because if you only require the tenderer to provide a system with a minimum track record of not less than 6 months before you award such a huge sum, we are talking about all 8 contracts together amounting to $1.5 billion. The system itself is about $480 million. So, during the tendering stage, why would you set such a short length of track record as eligibility? Shouldn't you have required a longer operation period. And the last contract required a year. Yes, the last contract required a year and it's been shortened to only 6 months. And we asked the DG and the assistant DG who assisted him. We asked, this 83 was used by only a handful of airports. So, the successful tenderer, what has it submitted to support its track record of 6 months? And then he said that, well, that is not an understanding of the tender document. It's not for the entire 83 system to be operating for 6 months. If a part of the system has been used in one airport and the other part is used by another airport, it can be accepted as meeting the requirement. So we asked, is it the case that all tenderers or potential tenderers are aware of this fact? And the answer was no. The understanding, as was given to us during the public hearing, has never been made known. And during the tendering exercise, there is a serious mistake, because you have to make sure that you are fair to all tenderers or potential tenderers. You can't say that, well, since you are you have given us the previous system, so you should know what we have in mind. Well, I was asked by the chairman to explain to you. Well, you see that there are irregularities in all 3 aspects. We're looking forward as to whether we are confident that at the end of June next year, 83 can be commissioned. To be honest, in the hearing, we see that the CAD and in particular the DG has made a lot of omissions and mistakes, and given his track record, we are not very confident. That's why we made the suggestion to ask the government to consider engaging external and independent experts to assess whether the system will be commissioned in the first half of 2016, as stated by Mr. Law. Well, the track record of the officials don't instill confidence in us, and that's why we made this suggestion. And a lot of reporters are concerned what expectations we have after the government has received the report and what follow-up we expect to see. Well, apart from urging the CAD to make sure that the system will be delivered before the first half of 2016, the government will have to engage external independent experts.
And Mr. Liu and also some officials of the CAD are civil servants. The government has a set of codes regarding the management of civil servants, so it's not for the PAC to dictate what the government should do, and I believe the CS4A will respond at a later stage. And we also have to follow up whether there is any liquidated damages that the CAD can claim, but will not comment further because there might be litigations or arbitration later. And in fact, we do not go in depth into this in our evidence-taking process. Anyway, the new ATMS made the PAC very uneasy, and we do not have enough reasons to assure us that the system can be delivered by end of June next year, because there are still 16 issues not resolved. Mr. Kenneth Leung. the date of commissioning. The target date is now June next year. Of course, I hope that can be on time, but an even more serious issue is, as said by the chairman, there are 16 technical issues not yet resolved. And if we set a deadline for the commissioning of the new system, we're not sure whether the 16 technical issues can be adequately resolved. We are worried that they might be rushed into commissioning the system without properly addressing these issues. This is the concern of all the PAC. And then there is a contract for a term for rescinding the contract, and that is if the supplier has sovereignly delay in delivering the contract, then the government has the right to rescind the contract. And for how much longer do we have to wait? Do we wait until 2016 or 2017 or 28 before the government takes this move to rescind the contract? This is something for the THB to consider very carefully, because this is not just about money. Once again, I reiterate, we are talking about the safety of property and lives, and also Hong Kong's position as an international and regional aviation hub and financial center. Our reputation is also at stake. We do have such a mechanism, but in the 6 meetings, I can say on behalf of my colleagues, there was no single answer which we were satisfied, whether it be from the department or elsewhere. So we are very, very worried about this matter, and we really hope that the THB can take or can give us some appropriate responses so that the matter can be set right. Last 2 questions.
The report you specifically named the head of CAD as being negligent. And so would you say that this whole fiasco was due to the recklessness of one person, or does it actually reflect a more deep-seated systemic problem within the department and also the government as well? Because as we see, it's got a track record of, with the radar, of spending recklessly as well.
We haven't used the word reckless. We have used the word negligent and incompetence. In respect to the drawing up of the tender implementation, the tender award, tender implementation, whether this reflects whether a systematic problem in there is not within the realm of this PAC report. The PAC report derives from the Director of Audit's finding, and according to the public hearings that we went in search of the truth or the facts. And on those basis, we identify and focus our attention on the procurement of the new ATMS system and the PRM radar system. So our task is very specific, task-oriented. We haven't actually looked into the governance or other problems of management. That is, we only highlight the problem. It's up to government to do what they do, because they are not a department that under our responsibility. They are actually, CAD is the department under the Secretary for Transport and Housing. Thank you. Thank you.
One last question. I have a quick question. It said that before the DG gave evidence, you received many letters from staff of CAD claiming that the facts were not as what the DG said in his statement. Did you come to the conclusion, have you come to the conclusion that the DG was lying? Which paper are you from? Ming Pao. Well, you have a lot of inside information. All right. No, we are not targeting at any particular media organization. While we were conducting the hearings. Indeed, we received plenty of information. Some was useful, some was targeting at certain individuals. Before every meeting, we decided how to deal with such information. Some of them were anonymous. Some members used the information in their questions. They did not use the information to confirm anything. We have not accepted any information we receive in drafting the report. All our report is based on the Audit Commission report number 63 and also evidence gathered in the 6 open hearings. We've also written to the CAD and other government departments for information. So we've exhausted all our formal channels. We used all our formal documents. Yes, we made reference to some information papers. I think those papers were submitted to us not for any ulterior motive. I think they were genuine in trying to give us information. Have I answered your question? DG, well, the DG's replies may not be satisfactory or may not be able to satisfy us, but I don't feel that he was deliberately lying to us. We didn't feel that he was deliberately lying to us. Yes, he might be beating around the bush. Please refer to para 7 of our report, page 7. The PAC has received a number of information or submissions from members of the public on the drafting of the contract, the tendering terms, the process, the management of the system, and also the reliability of the ATMS. We welcome the public to give their views on anything under inquiry, but we rely on evidence taken in open hearings and also supplementary information from witnesses.
Last question, please.
Standard.
I'm from Standard. I have 2 questions. The first one, well, you used the word strongly and deplore. You use 2 different terms, which is more than the description you use on the Timothy Tong. Does it mean that you think this is more serious than the Timothy Tong case? And if there has been a series of negligence, do you really have to ask whether the person should resign? Well, first question. The nature of this is different from Timothy Tong's report. We deal with every case separately and independently. We have to obtain information before we compile the report, as Mr. Alan Leung has read out. So you can't make a direct comparison. The words may be the same or similar, but we look at each report separately. Thank you. Thank you. Still 3 minutes. We don't want the meeting to be aborted.